How do you save coal power plant jobs as we make the transition to renewable energy? This is going to sound ridiculous, but I'll explain how we get there. You put a toaster in a box, an industrial grade toaster in an industrial grade box. You heat up the stuff in the box, which could be carbon, it could be sand, it could be a lot of things. You store thermal energy in that, and then you can use that stored thermal energy to, if we crunch the numbers right, run the turbine that's about to be within the withered power plant. I wrote my master's thesis on technology ethics, and one of the things that you can do at a technological crossroads is not reinvent the wheel or invent a new kind of wheel, but use existing technologies in creative and new ways. The inventor of the Game Boy did this, and in this book, Range, by David Epstein, he talks about it in chapter 9. He calls it lateral thinking with withered technology. Missouri actually uses lots of coal. I did not know this. Our Labadie power plant about here is the second most polluting coal power plant in the entire United States, and there are no plans to shut it down. There is another power plant called the Rush Island plant, which is a little smaller, and it is being planned to eventually be closed down, but the closing keeps getting delayed in part because our electricity grid is not very stable. So just for the sake of it, whatever your politics are and whatever your view on climate change is, I have a view on it, but this video is about the practicality of the fact that many of these plants are going to be closing, and so what are we going to do with some of those people and those jobs? As of right now, it seems to me like we're in a sort of hard cut model. The coal plant closes, and then there has to be another job lined up. And maybe there's not very much time in between these two things, but there is going to be a significant skill learning curve in completely transitioning from one form of energy to a completely different market. The first part of my idea is that instead of having this hard cut model, we do a progressive handoff model. There's some unknown amount of time before this plant closes, and there are a couple things that could be done to keep those jobs at that location and have them not need to go out of the town. Within limits, this approach also honors the expertise of the workers who are there. One of the core tenets of my channel, as I said in the last video, is to trust experts, and the people working in these plants, any coal plant, have developed expertise that we shouldn't just throw away in an abrupt transition to a new energy architecture. How, internet guy, could we do that? The real name for a toaster in a box is a thermal battery. A lot of people don't know about thermal batteries, and it's going to take a couple of steps to get there. As you are well aware, since you made it through kindergarten, the sun sets and the wind occasionally stops. So despite the fact that Missouri has a lot of wind power and developing solar power, this can't be the only thing that is working within the grid. To stabilize any power grid as we make this transition, we will need energy storage. Even though lithium-ion batteries are everywhere, they are cost prohibitive when you start using them at grid scale. The Rush Island power plant has like 1,200 megawatts of capacity. That is a lot of batteries, and the state of Missouri can't afford that right now. Also, the batteries themselves are made of rare earth metals that we have a finite amount of. So put a toaster in a box, aka a thermal battery. What is that? How does it work? And how does it help save coal power plant jobs specifically? The simplest version is you fill a grain silo with sand. Sounds ridiculous, but there's a company in Finland that is doing this already. Polar Night has sand thermal batteries. Take a grain silo, insulate the heck out of it, fill it with sand, and in between the sand you put a toaster, not an industrial grade toaster, heating elements that get hot when you run electricity through them. Option 2, molten salt. You might have heard of this technology when you see solar thermal, which is a way to directly heat materials by concentrating sunlight. I don't know if the Rush Island or Labadie site is a good candidate for that. My intuition would be that it's probably not, though maybe there's some capacity there, so that could be maybe in the future. But you heat up a special salt mixture that you can make ridiculously hot, and you store it not in a grain silo that's super insulated, but like a super steel insulated grain silo, but just fancier. And with a kind of poetic flourish, the last option is this. Carbon, the graphite that you would find in a common pencil. This stuff, it turns out, can get ridiculously hot without melting, so you can put tons of thermal energy. It's a very effective thermal battery, and because it is so effective, you don't need a grain silo for it. You just need like a shipping container size thing. We could drop 3 or 4 shipping containers off at a coal power plant that's about to go under somewhere in the United States, plug the water lines. I know you can't plug them in, they're super high pressure, they're super critical steam, but connect the water lines through the high temperature battery, and Bob's your uncle, you are saving jobs at a power plant. One of the companies that is doing this is called Antora Energy, and they are US based. All 3 of these options could function as thermal batteries, viable thermal batteries that could store energy at the plant. To clarify, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, they wouldn't be using the coal to charge the battery, though I suppose that's an option. They'd be using the excess energy during times of high energy when the sun hasn't set and when the wind has not stopped. And that amount of energy is just going to go up and up as renewables become cheaper than fossil fuels. So again, whatever your politics are, the economics are renewables are increasing, but energy storage has not yet followed. There will be an incentive for people to figure this out. Cool. I've talked for too long, but I got real excited about thermal batteries and stuff. I think I had a couple more points. Let me double check my notes. Right. Okay, first point is that this approach honors the expertise of the people who understand how to use those steam turbines. I've spent a couple days trying to wrap my head around them. They're pretty freaking complicated, and the people that have worked for most of their lives in those plants have specialized skills that we shouldn't just throw away because we're transitioning in our forms of energy. Second, final point, smaller. The connections are already there. I've never seen a map of the grid in Missouri, but these things are not cheap to build. The interconnections are there, and the original reason that the plant couldn't be closed is because of grid instability, and why would we be wanting to take a major node off? The connections are already there, the machinery is already there. It's a win-win, win-win-win-win, win-win-win. And at the danger of injecting a little bit of politics, there is a chance that doing this is not economical in the short term, that it might need to be propped up a little by government investment. Guess what though? Fossil fuels have been backed up by government subsidies for like frickin' the entire time. So level the playing field, or at least be intellectually willing and open to the concept of leveling the playing field in using subsidy money to make something like this happen. I do not have expertise in how to make a company called Ameren do a thing. I just scribble things on an iPad and read a lot of books. But I think that there's viability to this plan, and I think people who are experts in it should investigate it, or if not this specifically, something a whole lot like this. And I know I just said that I don't know how to make a big company do something. Let me prove that right now. Ameren should not do this sharp cutoff model and should have a progressive training model. And part of my reasoning for that is because you owe us. Even though you won't publicly admit it, you've been polluting Missouri and increasing arsenic levels and making ash piles. Like, you've been contaminating the state for decades, and you owe it to us to do that. You're not going to do that out of the kindness of your heart because you're a freaking company. But if you were to embrace a transition like this, you could not only be creating new jobs, you could be significantly changing your brand within Missouri specifically, which last I checked is not the best. Anyway, all right, that's talked enough. Sign up for my Patreon if you're still here, or like or share or subscribe with the buttons, clicking the buttons of that nature, specifically if you know someone who has any modicum of power over these decisions. Cool?